Hello everyone, I'm Nasmus. Welcome to the channel where we do beautiful modular LangGraph workflows using beautiful modular code. Today I have an agent that can categorize your email, and depending on what the email category is, it can notify you, ignore the email, or respond to the email based on the content of the email. We are building this agent using LangGraph as usual. Specifically, we're combining a router component, which is basically controls the workflow of the whole agent, with an agent component, which has access to the tools required to respond to the emails. So let me show you the whole workflow in LangGraph Studio. So this is LangGraph Studio, a visual way to see the LangGraph workflow. And over here, I have some examples. So this first example is basically an example from a professor asking me about my research interests. So the agent is guided to respond to this kind of emails because this kind of emails are very custom, and basically a professor is asking you for your research interests. This kind of emails cannot be ignored. So basically we want to respond to this kind of email. So let's see how our workflow behaves. So we have the author field, the to field, the subject of the email, and the email thread saying, so this is an email from the professor. It says that as we begin to plan for our upcoming projects, I wanted to check in and learn more about your current research interest. So we want our automated research agent to respond to this kind of emails. So let's see what happens under the hood. So I press submit on LangGraph Studio, and let's go to LangSmith and check what's happening under the hood. So as you can see, the request is running, and in the first triage router, which basically is going to categorize the email and send it to our agent depending on what it categorizes, or ends the workflow depending on how it categorizes the email. So this is the triage router over here. This is the input of the triage router. So as you can see, the role of the triage router is that your role is to triage an incoming email based on the instructions and the background information below. So over here, we give some background information about who I am, some instructions about how it should classify the emails. So it should ignore the emails which are not worth responding, notify about important emails, and respond to emails which need a direct response. So we define the types of emails that should be ignored, notified, or responded to in an instruction format to the as an instruction format over here. So as you can see, for these, you should notify using notification. So over here, Blackboard notifications, ResearchGate, Elsevier, research papers, system notifications, automatic notifications. For all these topics, the triage node should basically notify us. For emails that are not worth responding, we put like these rules over here. So marketing newsletters, any spam. For emails that are worth responding to, those are direct emails, direct questions from professors. And we have some more categories over here. So as you can see, after we give the system prompt, which contains the roles, the background, the instructions, the rules, we add the human message, which has the email that we're trying to categorize in it. So as you can see over here, the triage node basically answers with the classification of respond. So it intelligently decides that this is a email worth responding to, and it also comes up with the reasoning. So the emails that direct questions from your professor asking about my current research interests, which requires a response to provide the request information. So this is pretty cool. So now, because we have the respond as the classification key, this email is going to be sent to our respond agent. So our response agent basically is a React style agent which has tools. So you can see over here the write email and the done. These two tools in its arsenal. So now it's going to use the write email tool to basically write an email as a response to the email that we got from our professor. As you can see over here, dear professor, I hope the message finds you well. I'm currently exploring topics related to, so we left so basically it doesn't fill any topic that you're interested in, because I haven't really provided what I'm interested in. But in the background, if I provide what I'm interested in over here, so in this background, in the system prompt, if I provide what I'm interested in, it would respond accordingly. But for now, we're going to leave this empty because this is a kind of application where the cost of mistaken responses is very high. So later on, maybe not in this video, but in the next one, we want to add human in the loop to basically edit this kind of things and customize a little bit of the email so that most of it is automated, but we have a human in the loop to customize it appropriately and also double check before we send the email, because that's very important. We don't want to be sending like a weird email to our professor now. So basically, there you go. This is the email response that was written using the write email tool. And then now this response is just given back to us, and the workflow ends. So this is our basically workflow, and now we're going to look at the code. So this is the folder that I'm having the code in. As you can see, this is the folder we have our code in. So now, basically, just like my previous videos, I always organize the folder, the work folder, into different I segment different components of the agent of the workflow into different folders. So basically, my file structure looks like this. So I have the state. So this is where the keys that will be populated by the workflows are situated. So throughout the nodes in the workflow, these keys will be populated. So as you can see over here, we have the classification decision as a literal. So there are three options: ignore, respond, and notify. And then we have the configuration, where I describe different things like the model that we're going to be using, the name of the model. Today we're going to be using GPT-4o Mini. The tools. So I have two tools over here. These are basically dummy tools. But later on we can most probably use API or MCP protocol, MCP server, to basically send emails to a real service like Outlook or Gmail. But as of now, I have a dummy tool over here which has which is called write email. So this basically responds with email sent to the sender with the subject and the content. And also we have another tool called done, which just responds with a Boolean value of whether the done is true or false. Okay, now, so we go to, so before I get, so basically so now we have the configuration, we're in the configuration file. Basically we have other files like prompts. So prompts is where it's like, basically I have all the prompts situated. And we also have graph. So this basically, the graph is where the workflow is defined. And in this case, I also have another folder called agent graph, which has our agent in it. I created it as a subgraph because it's basically so we are trying to create a modular workflow. So basically, when we create a subgraph with our agent, it reduces the clutter in the main graph. As you can see, our main graph is super simple, and we can just add a node called agent, which points to this agent graph. And basically, a lot of code is abstracted away in this agent graph, and that's how our main file looks very clean and and the whole workflow remains very modular. Okay, so now I'm going to basically, before I explain what's going on in the graph, I want to show the philosophy of building this system. So now going to our image file over here, we can see that we have for every incoming email, we have a router which is the triage node, which makes the decision about the email and decides whether it should ignore it, respond to it, or notify it. And if the router decides that it wants to respond to the email is sent to our React style agent, basically. So if you want to understand what a React style agent is, basically the email input is sent to the LLM. The LLM decides a tool call. The tool call gives a certain kind of observation back to the LLM, and depending on the observation, the LLM decides whether it should call the tool again, call any tool again, or it should end the loop, which is the loop termination. So in that way, depending on the LLM's choice, the LLM's reasoning and observation, the tool can be called over and over and over and over again. So this kind of looped tool call due to agent reasoning is basically the core of the React style agent. So now back to our workflow. So depending on if our triage node wants to respond, we send it to our React style agent. The React style agent uses the tools to respond to the email, and then we get our email response. So it's basically a simple workflow, but it can be complicated if you want to add components like memory and human in the loop and detailed evaluations to it. So for now, we are just building the agent. So the basic agent. So now we are going to explain the graph.py, which contains the main workflow. So starting with the router code over here. So we have the triage node over here. So we have over here a pydantic schema, which defines that there should be a field called reasoning, which contains string, and a field called classification, which has literal of ignore, respond, or notify. So we import our LLM from our configuration, and then we bind our LLM to the pedantic schema that I just described using this function called with structured output, which is a very nice function provided by LangChain. And now, basically, we use parse email from which is in our utils function. You can find it, which is in our utils file. So basically, it just parses the author, the to, the subject, and the email thread from our from our email input key that we just passed in, and gives us the author, the to, the subject, the email. And then we build our system prompt with this triage system prompt, which can be found in the configuration again. You can take a look at that. So just to show you, this is what it looks like. So it goes to the configuration in our prompt file. So this is basically the triage system prompt. So the triage system prompt is very it's very generic, and it's just it tells the triage node what to do. So as you can see over here, your role is to triage incoming emails based on the instructions and background information knowledge, and it also gives you the node the categories it should classify the email into. And then we have default background, so a little background about who I am, and also the triage instructions. So these are like a little bit deeper instructions about what should be what should be ignored, what should be modified, and what should be responded to. So we can go there. So as you can see, these are the instructions over here about what's worth not responding, what's not worth responding to, what should be notified, and what should be responded to. So that's how we construct our system prompt, and then basically we also construct our user prompt using the author, the subject, the to, and the email thread that we extracted from our input. And then we invoke our LLM basically. So this is the LLM that we created with the structured output. We invoke our LLM with the system prompt and the user prompt. So now, depending on the result that we get, if the classification, so remember, we in our pedantic schema, we defined what classification is. And so that's why the LLM automatically is going to coerce its output to input, to ignore, respond, or notify due to the structured output and this schema over here. So depending on the output, if it's respond, we are going to go to the respond agent, and we're going to update the messages key with the content, and also the classification decision key with the result of the classification, which is going to be respond. So if the result of the classification is ignore, then we do not go to the respond agent. We don't need to go to the respond agent, but we only we update the classification key, classification decision key with the classification result, which is ignore. Similarly for the notify, we do not go to the respond agent, but we just update the classification decision with the result of classification, which is this notify. So basically that's it for our triage node. But now what happens in case we want to respond and we go to respond agent? So if we want to go to the respond agent, as you can see over here, we have to invoke the agent graph. So the agent graph is separate over here. As you can see over here, we have the LLM call. So the LLM call, basically in the LLM call function, which is the node, which is the definition of the node, we initiate the configuration, and we basically put the tools inside the We put the tools inside the tools array. So these are just the definition of the tools. And then we load our LLM, and we basically bind the tools to the LLM using this bind tool function provided by LangChain. And we also provide tool choice any. So this means the LLM is forced to use a tool at this call. So we are enforcing tool use. So, and after that, depending on the result of the tool call, we want to update the message key with so as you can see over here, with the invocation, with the results of the invocation. Plus, we want to also pass in the messages, the old messages array, the old messages list inside the new message list. That's how we want to update the state. So now we come to the tool handler node. The logic in the tool handler node shows that so this is the node basically used to invoke the tool. So as you can see, we have the definitions of the tool, we have the tools by name, and basically depending on what tool that is in the last space of the message, we want to invoke that tool, and we want to update the result that we have from this invocation into a definition which contains role as the tool and the observations from the tool, and also the tool ID, and then we want to update the messages array. So the logic that is used in order to create this React style agent lies over here in the should continue, basically conditional edge over here. So basically what this does is that if our tool calls name is done, which is the agent has invoked the done tool, then we end, and if not, we go to the tool handler over here. The tool handler basically invokes the tool in the last message, like I just described in the previous node, and updates the message state. And that's it. Now we build our workflow over here, and we compile, and we define it as our agent. This agent is basically imported over here in our main graph, and is passed on in our overall workflow over here. So this is a very interesting way that you can define the overall workflow in LangGraph. As you can see, we have the state, and then we add the node as we add the triage router as the node. Then we add our agent as the node, and then we define a start point of our workflow, which is the triage router, and then we just compile our graph. And as you can see, this is all you need to create this kind of workflow. And now to end things, I want to show the second example I put in the examples file. The first example is what I ran at the beginning of this video about our professor asking for our research interest, and the AI basically responding with an appropriate email. But in this example, I have a scheduled maintenance email from the system admin, and basically we are supposed to just get a notification for this email, and we are not supposed to be responded. We're not supposed to be responding to this email, or we're not even supposed to ignore this email because, you know, something interesting to know, the database downtime. Okay, so now let's go to our LangGraph Studio, and then put in the example that I copied about scheduled maintenance and hit submit. As you can see, it's running. Let's go to LangSmith and see what's going on under the hood. So as you can see, our triage router node has classified the email as notify, and its reasoning is that the email is a notification about scheduled maintenance on the university database, which is important information for planning work, but does not require a direct response. So it's behaving as it should. So this is an interesting graph, but many other things can be added to this graph, like evaluation, human in the loop checks before deploying email. We can use a real API to make this app functional. Lots of things can be done to improve this workflow and turn it into a real app. So in the upcoming videos, I will try to integrate many other features which will make this workflow real world ready. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe and like the video. Thank you.